Thanks, I started this.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I work when she sleeps pretty much. Good, very active right now. So it's challenging. She's almost 14 months. Yeah, so she's not quite research.
Because I always have funded part control. Believe it or not, they create a separate agency, which then creates a tax.
Well, right, exactly. We get to go.
So you're a developer, do you want to build across the street from the parking lot? We want to build. We want to build 2%, 3% together every year. They're going to pay for this. So the agency goes out and they bond it on their own, and then they get the money back from the development, never involving the municipality, even though it's quasi-public. So it's an interesting way to fund a structure. And you need to know that you're going to have to develop to pay, to pay back. Yeah, exactly. Now you're kind of caught in between. When the numbers starting to come.
Right, yeah. I'm thinking, broader to specific.
They're already in. Yeah. People know about it. It's just when you talk about it like in some conversations, they know.
I think that's good.
Yeah. There you go.
How are you? Million faces this week, I'm telling you. Yeah. I missed all the good stuff, huh?
Yeah, I just took that out to move the.
Want to get it on video?
All courts here. 3, 4.
Oh, yeah.
They're very, that's what I'm trying to how did you do it? How did you get people to be involved? Everyone loves to talk to you, but then when you ask for something, in some ways, yeah.
You're going to have that up,
You can do it, right? Yeah.
well, I think somebody's going.
Time ended like where? Real cold.
Especially
You can be leaving.
we just won't get it back.
It's funny because if you something on the street, you usually get a pretty good conversation.
A few weeks earlier.
I'll go and side message people that are most local and say, hey, if you have an issue with this, this is how you can get involved. You can come to the village board meeting, you can get involved in the vision, personally look into it. Oh, can't make any promises.
So I do like trainings.
Oh, I'm busy with my kids. I understand that. I get it. I have a child now, I'm starting to see what it is. But don't be the person that just sits back
We
and
have
complains
tons of like
about all this
FEMA
shit. You gotta
materials
get
and like all different trainings
exactly.
about like
You gotta get
what businesses do. Okay.
But we do it we usually bring it
Vincent gets frustrated.
That's the easiest way, right?
He's always sticking his
Yeah, well, I'm going to the Patch Out Commerce. Their co-op is actually doing it. They're speaking.
and I know you're like, I should get like here. Vincent and I went and said, look, we're going to rebuild the club. Yes, we're going to slowly chip away. And we're going to work with the community. We have this great bipartisan thing going on. Community,
say tomorrow,
you see
happens again.
How many times the Democrats came on the county, Democrats came on the presidential election, and they promised them the office. And we said, yeah, what do you do? We do it now. You have an ad, it's being the share. I think that everything's changed. And it's just like that. It's bullshit. And they and like me,
Some days, like,
I usually
keep
hold on
track of
party
your
lines.
employees and like make sure that you're actually if they're at work, when there's an opportunity there, like,
I didn't like it. Yeah. I'm not gonna vote for him. I'm not gonna help his campaign. Where's the people? They didn't like it. Gotta do it.
I got so stupid. I got the first date.
And it's not that way.
First date kid. You know, like,
You know, and you look in that stuff, you know, because Jesus said, sometimes you do have to kind of go with your full vision, you know, to get, the things you'd like to achieve. Oh my God, we do it. Like the flexibility.
you know, when you're running a bunch of events, these are the things you know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, I'll go with this. We'll do it. We'll go ahead with this. I'm on board. Yeah.
on that brand for me.
I work for an old guy.
I'm talking to a lot about these. Always get these people that want to run against them.
So what did you do?
They've never been involved in community discussions. I was just thinking, walk into the show and say, I'm in.
no, it's actually a
It's
different.
not even like they had a cause. Like,
They gave her money.
at least they were standing up for something. Yeah, nothing to do.
I actually know somebody who bought a house. They got to the house, they went to the garage, and the key told me. They're like, what is this? And they looked it all up. People, one of the family members from the owned this house, and that was their goal. Like, I mean, what I
And then even I always say this, when the Republicans have their shit together, and the woman who's running, I forget her name, take a picture with Demond and Kim, and as they're taking the picture, she goes, oh, I'm still a trustee. Oh,
It's actually not in.
you think someone would went to Demond and said, oh, that person's going to be running against you? Yeah, come on, Demond's
So I'm sure you deal with snowboard.
Oh, I know that name.
He's got power. He's approaching it over there.
It's crazy. It's really, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. So you're. I should. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so all of us have
Shouldn't have a shot. Yeah, it's a very low number.
Oh, I skipped that one.
Yeah.
I was gonna go to Kip.
That one, I was just reasoning for that conversation. Like everyone knows at this point, that's literally it's a problem. We need more things to do.
All these people, if you have a chance to go to the vision page, I want to see posts by others every day that actually about there on the street. No, I'm talking about like we're not going to come to Valley Stream. How do they respond? But I mean, I'm just sure.
That's as loud as I can get.
Do it. County.
We're going to get started. Hopefully she'll jump in shortly. We're here today to talk about parking, an ever sexy topic, but unfortunately drives much of what we do as planners. That and sewers, another fun topic. So we're going to talk about different techniques of how to best manage parking so that you have enough for what you need, but not so much that it kills what you're trying to help. Whether it's in downtown as far as it hurting walkability and different ways of designing and structuring parking so that it really maximizes its effectiveness. We have a range of panelists here. We have Mark Ander from AECOM, also the Green Parking Council, correct? Talking about some broader national examples, what can be done around the country. We also have Sean Sally from Nassau County Department of Public Works and Planning, talking about some more local examples. We have Bob Shiner from the Huntington Township Chamber of Commerce, talking about some of the new parking that's going on in Huntington, whether new meters and other stuff. Victor Dadris from, Dadris Architects, doing Main Street revitalization. And Kathleen Neeg from Chile Puerto Rican, talking about some codes and working on coding parking. Okay, Mark, you want to get started?
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see such a full, at capacity, crowd interested in parking. And I think everyone here, is very passionate about parking, and we see that parking is, part of the solution. And we take a, full 360-degree view of our built environment and how we work to solve parking. We know the world is changing. You've heard it throughout the day that there's issues of millennials and what that means for vehicle miles traveled and their preferences, whether to stay or leave within Long Island, and some solutions on how to deal with our changing population, both in the millennial side of the equation and also on the aged side of the equation. We live in a dynamic period right now where both technology and demographics, residents, and opportunities are changing quite a bit in terms of employment, opportunities, technology, innovation, et cetera. And all these are converging together and creating more options and choices for people in terms of how they get from A to B or B to C or back to A again. And you've heard a lot of discussions about car sharing, intelligent parking solutions, e-mobility. All this comes into the mix, I think, in terms of how we reach and achieve a future state of sustainability and trying to create a better and livable place. We love our cars. We've heard it throughout the day, despite what we do in trying to have a different type of modal options for people, either bus rapid transit or more passengers who are subscribing to the Long Island Railroad. The car is going to be with it. It's a wonderful form of transportation, completely distributed. You can get many different places all at once, and despite the best intentions over the past several years, and I'm in a multimodal transit division within AECOM, and I work on transit plans, but the share of modes for cars has been this way for 40 or 50 years, and it looks like it'll take a tremendous transformation for it to change differently. We're working towards it. We like compact mixed-use development projects around the corridor. We embrace TOD, but the car will be with us for a long time. But what type of car will we have? Is it fits within this framework of a new mobility solution? How to get from door A to B, and everything within that is becoming more prevalent today. If you just sort of chart it out in terms of what we call sustainable mobility options, you can see, like, since 2000, all these different types of ways of getting around. Car sharing, bike sharing, car-free zones, smart cars, bus rapid transit, all these activities have just surged since, really since 2000, and becoming very more prevalent. The sharing economy, car sharing arrangements. Of course, the electric vehicle. This happens to be a shot in back of Googleplex in Mountain View, where some BMWs are parked in their stalls. So what is the role for parking in this whole equation? Which direction for parking? Well, parking matters, as we're going to hear throughout today. This happens to be the NSA headquarters, where they have about 30,000 parking spaces that are contributing to the whole heat island effect of Maryland. Parking is is gratuitous sometimes and ubiquitous. It's what your car does 90% of the time. It happens either here, it happens here, or it can really happen in different situations like this. So it's something for everyone is here. When we start off and look at a community or a district or a precinct, we kind of also try to balance and manage parking. And we have a 12-step process that we go through. We can take you through it. We can be your sponsor for this. And there's a way that you can, at the end of it, reach a really good basis of decision making and to solve your solution. Because the parking requirement ratio is super important. If you go through these 12 steps, you'll come out a better municipality, a better jurisdiction. A lot of things that come into play are parking mobility services, something that you have on your app. Many of us use these now, and also what's called smart parking. There's a form of parking that's really becoming more prevalent in terms of parking technology, where you're entering into a parking, you don't know where to park. And there are various technologies such as Park Assist, that when you're at the gate of the parking garage or even a lot, it can tell you, well, this is the area where you can go to park your car. So you don't have to spin and spend a lot of time looking for a parking space. You can go directly to your parking space. And retailers like that, because the less time you spend in a parking lot, the more time you can spend in the store. So these are all technological solutions that are right on the truck, ready to use, and that are being implemented. So a question we have for you is, if transportation produces 30% of all global warming emissions, and if 60% of transportation emissions come from cars and light trucks, can structures and lots that house these vehicles be sustainable? I think the answer probably is yes. I think they could be. So there is a real movement now about the changing nature of parking. There's all these types of tools that have come into play that we can use to improve the sustainability profile and make green parking a reality, not so that it's an oxymoron. What kind of propelled us forward in looking at green parking solutions really came when the USGBC came out with an edict in 2011 that said parking garages may not pursue LEED certification. Sure, there are some parking garages like in Santa Monica or at Duke University that snuck in under the LEED certification on our platinum or gold, I should say, or bronze parking structures. But that left a gap in the industry. And many of my colleagues and friends in the parking, who are parking owners and operators, we banded together and we created a group called the Green Parking Council that's headquartered in New Haven, Connecticut. And we are a national nonprofit 501c3 organization that is working to green the parking lot. We represent half the parking footprint in North America. We have some of the major parking owners and operators or members of our group, and we're all banding together to try to green the parking facility and lot together. It's a remarkable organization, and we have both technology companies and some of the leaders in real estate companies that are very Simon Property, the largest retail mall operator in the United States, is very much came to us and wants to start greening their lots. So we came up with, over a 2-year process, a Green Garage certification standard that's sort of modeled after the USGBC that creates a framework and a way to implement green parking and awards a series through a process that we've defined. And we have a program where we train people to be green garage assessors. I'm a green garage assessor. And we have also just recently begun a memorandum of understanding with the USGBC that will be launched pretty soon, probably in early December. Watch for a rollout press release where ourselves and the USGBC will create a unified system where a building that becomes LEED certified will also then get points to become a GPC Green Parking Garage certified structure. So it's a wonderful verticality, it's a wonderful cooperation, so stay tuned for that. So we have different elements that make up a green garage. And lighting is certainly very prevalent for a garage, the controls at the gates that you have, the materials that go into the garage, all these things can be incorporated into the garage design to make it a better, sustainable green structure. And so we have a point system for it. We got a maximum of 248 points, and these are the ranges. If you have 160 points, then you get a nice gold plaque for your facility, and it creates value for the community, for your facility, and it really is a way of elevating the profile of parking in your community. Our group has a regional or national platform of different resources that come into play. We're part of the Lighting, Energy Efficiency, and Parking Campaign, or LEAP, and we offer webinars and seminars around every week, it seems like. So far, what has happened to the Green Garage rollout? Well, so far, since it's come out in June, we've had 11,000 parking spaces in 3 months, which is quite remarkable. And here's some examples of parking facilities around the country that have applied for green certification. And it can be done. Here's a great example in Golden, Colorado of the U.S. National Energy Lab. And if the place cannot build a green garage, why not this place? So, okay, it's large scale. It has a footprint that's the scale of a New York City block, 200 by 700. But it has, look at the cost per parking space. It's fairly low. In fact, it's much lower than what it is. And it has tremendous types of technology and kind of an ability to create a green facility. Also, we know about kind of the classic architecture that we have in Miami Beach, where you have these types of structures where people have weddings and there's boutiques on the parking. So parking can be much better than what we've seen. In Brooklyn, we have an example that's under construction now, a Metro Park, where parking is underneath and is mechanized, automated parking that's creating the ability to form a park that's above it. This is a great example of how to create a nice place, and then also including parking. An example is in Philadelphia, where they are transforming the downtown parking garage structure from this to this. From this, which is the retail they have beneath it, into this. Climate change is also hugely important because we want to be able to capture and not to have surface water runoff all over the place. So green parking in terms of pavement is important. And the type of pavement matters in terms of the material basis and how it can capture the rainwater and whether it contributes to the surface water runoff. So thank you very much. I have just a few points to cover today to introduce and get you excited that there is a national organization out there that has its mission for creating green parking structures that we represent the majority of the parking industry. So if you have any issues or problems, many of the owners and operators of parking facilities are members of the Green Parking Council, so you can come and see us. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm sorry everybody for being late this afternoon. I got caught up inside of the luncheon. My name is Kathleen Deegan-Dixon, and I'm a partner in the Land Use Department for Shelley Curto Deegan, Schwartz, Benio, and Tirana in Uniondale. And our firm is basically a real estate firm, but we do a lot of land use work here on Long Island. So when Eric first contacted me to participate on this panel, I thought, what do I have as an attorney to contribute to this? I'm not a planner or designer of parking. I don't implement parking regulations. But one thing that I have noticed is that parking is almost single-handedly the biggest driver of where, what type, and the size of development, where it goes on Long Island. It's interesting. One thing that I've noticed about parking codes that every parking code has in common is that it doesn't have anything in common with other parking codes. So you have to, when you go into a municipality with a proposed development, you really have to drill down on what kind of development it is, whether or not it's wanted, and a lot of times you can tell by the way the parking codes are designed. One of the common threads, as I mentioned, is that parking codes are often used to control density, the density and size of development, especially in commercial buildings. Many commercial codes don't have floor area ratio restrictions. They don't have lot coverage restrictions, but in effect they do because of the way the parking codes are designed. So you might go in and say, wow, I can build as big a building as I want. And then you get in there and you say, wow, where am I going to put my parking? There is an aversion, I would say, on Long Island traditionally to having underground and structured parking as part of individual buildings. Some of that is changing. It's getting better, but not all communities embrace it. Not all communities should embrace it. I mean, one of the beauties of Long Island is the diversity of the community, the different types of areas that we have. And while it can be frustrating, especially as a land use professional or a developer, to have to deal with individual local municipalities, it actually is part of the beauty of Long Island. So I wanted to give a couple of examples today of how parking regulations do limit, control, and often encourage different types of development on Long Island. The underground parking restriction, or the structured parking restriction, is something that two good examples are within the town of North Hempstead. One of them is in Manhasset, one of them is in Fort Washington. If you are familiar with Manhasset and you're driving west on Northern Boulevard, you'll look to the left and the right as you're going up the hill toward Great Neck, and you'll see these beautiful, in my mind, but in others maybe not, office buildings that are now primarily, I would say, housing medical offices these days. But those buildings couldn't be built today. At the time they were built probably larger than some people were comfortable with. And the parking is on 1 and 2 levels, either on the ground level or down below grade level. It enabled them to maximize the amount of square footage of the building without having to have surface parking around it. Those buildings could not be built today because after they were built, the town of North Hempstead changed its code to require that in commercial areas, all parking had to be surface, ground level, non-covered parking. So for better or for worse, that is a restriction that's there. And it may be appropriate, or it may certainly may have been appropriate at the time it was adopted. And I think there's a little bit of a struggle now with, especially with more medical office seeking to locate in that area around these hospital hubs, where parking is really, parking for medical offices, as most of you know, is more intense, the demand is more intense than general office. So I'm wondering, in the case of town North Hempstead and in Manhasset in particular, if they're going to wind that back a little bit. But I'm not suggesting they do or they don't, I'm just putting it out there. The other location in the town North Hempstead is the hamlet of Port Washington. Anybody who's been up there knows it's a beautiful area. It's at the very end of Searingtown Road, across to Port Washington Boulevard, County Route 101. And it's a wonderful waterfront community that goes up into Sands Point. The big issue there is traffic. It's not parking per se, but it's traffic. And local residents tend to resist more traffic coming in. Not necessarily business owners. The business owners, of course, would love to have as much traffic as possible, because traffic will bring customers and will help their restaurants and retail spaces thrive. But it is an issue. A big example is the proposal to put structured parking at the Port Washington train station. In my mind, I thought this is the perfect solution because it's a very popular train station. People from all over the North Shore of Long Island and in North Hempstead want to go there because it's a direct electric line right into New York City. A 30-minute train ride, you get off the train in Penn Station. So a lot of people want to go there. It's created a demand for parking in that area that is very hard for that hamlet to meet. So a proposal was brought in to do structured parking. There's been a few, I think, over the years, either right at or near the train station. And during community visionings and community meetings, it was overwhelmingly and vociferously shot down. Nobody wanted it. And in my mind, that's very surprising. But I guess if you are somebody who lives in Port Washington and you're dealing with a narrow main street and you're dealing with a busy train station, that you may have a resistance to destination-oriented development. You don't necessarily want to bring more people in. You really want to make sure that you can service the people who live there and pay the taxes there. And so that's one example of parking demand. And in downtown, I think it's a little bit unusual that in a downtown where there isn't a lot of parking, that people were not in favor of creating more parking. Another example of a destination oriented type of development that was denied also in Fort Washington was a hotel project that I had represented down on Lower Main Street. And that's a very congested area of Lower Main Street where it was proposed. It was I think by a lot of standards, a modest project. It was a 46-room boutique hotel. And there were a lot of people in the general community that were in favor of it, but a lot of the people in the immediate area were against it. And primarily it was traffic driven. We were able to, because of the size of the lot, we were able to prevail upon the town board to change the parking code to allow structured parking, to allow us to do underground parking there. And we've worked with some of the community groups, we worked with the planning department, we worked with the elected officials, and they said, yes, okay, we understand this is a good use, we want to do this here. So they were about to adopt the code, and when we got the final draft of the code, it said, yes, you can do underground parking, but you're now going to have an FAR limitation, which completely eliminated all the benefit of the parking, underground parking. So needless to say, the project did not go forward, and it really is because of the lack of parking and the lack of available parking relief. And that may be an appropriate result in that community. I find it kind of fascinating. It was one of my first experiences with watching parking drive density and parking drive the FAR policy, because it just, it's something that they don't really talk about, but it's a very real effect. Now on the flip side, there's other downtowns, especially those that are not really thriving, and Port Washington is a fairly thriving downtown. I mean, there's a lot of action there. A lot of other downtowns will use parking policy to encourage location of business. And one of the examples that's near and dear to my heart is the city of Glen Cove. I live in the city of Glen Cove, and I was the planning board and zoning board attorney there for 13 years. So I love Glen Cove, and I've watched the downtown go from being a real commercial center for that whole area when I was a child to now being a real, having gone into a severe decline, come up a little bit with urban renewal in the 70s and 80s, and sort of, it's been an up and down. But one of the issues I think that's true across Long Island, but particularly in Glen Cove, is that the retail uses were not thriving. So a lot of the retail uses went out of business, and we had a lot of empty storefronts. And over the course of a few different administrations, there was a recognition that to attract businesses, you needed to have people, and to bring people, you needed to have exciting things happening. So they modified the parking policy a little bit to attract restaurants and other entertainment-based retail, trying to bring a new critical mass of people downtown. Now, Glen Cove was built up in, I don't know when the buildings were built, but they're old. None of the downtown buildings have any parking associated with them. So every single business that isn't original needs a parking variance. One of the nice things about the Glen Cove City Code, or actually the City of Glen Cove, is that there's 3 municipal parking garages that back up to the main streets in downtown, Glen Street and School Street, and there's a lot of parking. So in order to attract some of the restaurants that have a higher parking demand than the retail that they replaced, the city allows them to count the parking in the parking garages. And really any commercial use downtown can get parking relief from the planning board as part of their site plan or special use process by being within 300 feet of downtown parking. And almost everywhere in downtown you're within 300 feet of the parking. They've also, for new restaurants, I believe, they've actually eliminated the parking requirement. You can pay into a parking fund, and then you're automatically entitled to parking relief. Some of the other tools that are used are allowing shared parking with non-simultaneous uses, where your restaurant or your pub or your theater or some of your evening uses can park in the bank parking lot or park in the office building parking lot next door. And that way it serves a couple of purposes. It allows these businesses to come in and have adequate parking, but it also limits the amount of surface parking, which I don't think anybody thinks is really pretty. It's convenient, everybody needs it, everybody wants it, but nobody really wants to look at it. So it achieves the objective of not wasting the time and the aesthetic of having surface parking. There are millions of examples all over Long Island. I figured I'd focus on a few that I was most familiar with. I think there's a lot of very positive examples, but it's something to keep in mind that parking really is something that has to be dealt with, and depending on the tenor of the community as far as the type of development they want, this is a way that they can control it. So you should understand that when you go into to do a development or bring a business into a community. So,
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Sally. I'm a planner with the Nassau County Planning Commission and the Department of Public Works. Just thought I'd share with you today some multifamily residential projects that have been approved and either constructed or in construction in Nassau County that have come before the Nassau County Planning Commission for review. At the Planning Commission, we do not issue that final approval, but again, we see a lot of the major developments that are referred by the municipalities, and we offer recommendations back with respect to parking as others. So just want to go through a couple of those, a couple of best practices that we've seen. I'm going to use the following 7 or 8 examples of multifamily residential developments. Basically, each one of these municipalities and development proposals that we'll go through here have used innovative parking tools to solve the parking problems. What we typically see, both at the by the municipality or driven by the developer, are 3 main tools that are used: either density to support structured parking, shared use parking, as Kathleen mentioned, or reduced parking ratios in the case where you have a development that's in close proximity to transit, and primarily the Long Island Railroad. So just to show you again, quick on the map here, those reddish circles are a half-mile radius from existing train stations, and just to kind of get you situated here. Again, context sensitive versus the one-size-fits-all model. Each municipality, each downtown, each station area is very different in terms of the built environment, the parking demand, the traffic conditions, congestion, etc. So it's really a contextual approach, and there are several tools that the municipality and the developer can use. Just before I go on, I just want to mention that again there are a whole host of other developments, developers and municipalities that are doing this work. We just chose these 7 for the purpose of today's presentation. Okay, we'll start with Avalon Bay and Mitchell Field. This is, there's a laser pointer right here, but here is the Meadowbrook Parkway. This is Nassau Community College and the homes at Mitchell Field, Stewart Avenue. This is former Navy property that was turned over to Avalon Bay in Nassau County about 4 years ago. And Avalon Bay received approval from the town of Hempstead to build 204 units. This, the town of Hempstead has a CA zoning district, which is basically multiple family, on the books, so they changed the zone from Residence B, single family, to CA to permit this development. The parking ratio that was approved was 2.5 spaces per unit. Now, if we go back to the map, you can see that this is fairly quite outside of that half-mile radius from existing train stations. And Avalon really built this to cater to the empty nester crew. So, the 2.5 space per unit was more appropriate. And given that modest density, everything's relative, surface parking was provided through regular surface lots and also garage units in most of the buildings. For I think they were able to get 1 garage unit for each. 1 garage space for each unit. By comparison here, Avalon Bay in Rockville Center, this site has an interesting history, but it was a former Dorby drug site, a Superfund. Originally, Chase Partners came in about 10 years ago and received approval to build 349 units, rental units. At the time, the parking, the Village Rockville Center, I'm sorry, I should mention that, Village Rockville Center, the village changed the parking requirement to 1.5 spaces per unit. They then, after seeing this development, ended up changing that, or trying to change that parking requirement to 1.9 spaces per unit, and Avalon filed suit. At the end of the day, Avalon prevailed, and they ended up building this development at 1.5 spaces per unit. Given the density, they were able to accommodate parking largely through structured parking within the building, semi-underground. This site is directly adjacent to the Long Island Railroad, Rockville Center Station, absolutely in walking distance. Not as good as the Manhasset or Port Washington stations, but again, the service is excellent, AM, PM. So, this was thought to attract the next generation cohort, and what we've seen is that it has. Quite recently, I had a conversation with Chris Capice, who's the development manager at Avalon Bay, and he was telling me that they had just finalized a parking study at the Avalon development that looked at the current utilization of the development. The development is fully leased up, and so they wanted to see exactly where they were with parking on site. And that study found about a 27% underutilization of parking, and of course, that count was taken in the evenings when the residents would be parked in their units. So it gets interesting because here's Avalon now proposing Avalon at Rockville Center 2, which is an adjacent site just to the east. It's a former racket club that is for sale, and Avalon is going through the development review and approval process now with the Village of Rockville Center. So the code was changed to 1.9 spaces per unit, so they are looking to reduce that down to 1.22 spaces, even less than Avalon 1, but taking into and also providing parking through surface and underground structure, but taking into account the surplus of parking at Avalon 1, so using that as a way to share parking versus building additional. So, stay tuned, but again, this sort of innovative approach. In this case, you have the same developer with adjacent sites, but wanting to build something that is not overparked, again, given the high cost of land and the limited availability of vacant land to build parking. So that's an interesting case. Okay, this is in the Village of Hempstead, the Renaissance Urban America project. Hello, we're familiar with this one. But this is part of the overall downtown overlay zone initiative put forth by the Village of Hempstead and Renaissance Downtowns. So stage one, as many of you heard, received planning board approval the other night. And so consistent with the downtown overlay zone, the parking requirement was reduced to 1 space per unit, again, given the proximity to the Village of Hempstead train station, which is right here. So absolutely in walking distance. So it's interesting that in this case, the development will actually be built on existing surface parking, which is currently owned by the Village of Hempstead. The southern portion is, the majority of those spaces are reserved for the town of Hempstead employees, with Hempstead Town Hall is just to the south there. Then you have an adjacent parking garage, which again is also owned by the village, which is severely or drastically underutilized. Currently, there are reserved spaces for Nassau County. Nassau County has its offices along Main Street. The town has a few reserved parking in some of the businesses. But after a very extensive parking analysis that was performed by Renaissance in consultation with the village, it reveals that, and you can see through this aerial, assuming this was taken on a weekend, but if you drive past there on a regular weekday, you'll see the gross and the overutilization at that site. So they're able to not only accommodate the existing levels of the existing parking demand, but also accommodate the new parking demand that will stem from the new residential development there, and it's about 336 units. So we think it's a great project, and we look forward to seeing that move forward. But again, another innovative approach. You have an existing parking garage. In this case, you're removing the unsightly surface parking area. Okay, here's an example from Farmingdale. This is Barton Plaza. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the master planning effort that went on in the village, or continues to evolve in the village of Farmingdale. The village also enacted an overlay zoning district that codified new parking requirements for development that would come in under this downtown overlay zone. So in this case, they're proposing 115 units and about 17,000 square feet of retail space. Parking in this case will be accommodated through some underground parking, but also shared use with the adjacent Long Island Railroad parking lot that is managed by the village of Farmingdale. So again, the technique is, as Kathy mentioned, of shared use. Commuters and shopping parking peaks during the day, and then in the evenings when most of the residents are back in their units, they can take advantage of those open parking fields. So again, it's really good to see a master planning effort move through into the zoning implementation phase, and now the actual developments coming in under that. So again, the village code permits the shared parking that comes with the requirement for a parking analysis. So very, very important to do some of that work up front because again, every situation is different. So you may be able to take advantage of an opportunity that is revealed through these parking analyses. Model blocks in Port Washington. This is also the site that Kathy had mentioned for the boutique hotel. Wes Sternberg is here from the village, from the town of North Hempstead, who can get more in depth in this on this project. But basically, it's a new mixed-use development. 12 units of residential with about 5,400 square feet of office. The model blocks overlay district was enacted in the town of North Hempstead in Port Washington, and this is Lower Main Street. So the zone is being implemented here with this development, and the shared parking requirement or shared parking is permitted in this overlay zone and is being taken advantage of here with shared parking at the town dock, which is right here for the office space. So the residents will have a parking stall on site. The office tenants and employees will have to walk back and forth from the town dock. But again, taking advantage of your existing parking stock. Winston and Mineola, this is right at County Seat on the north side of Old Country Road in the village of Mineola. The south side happens to be the village of Garden City, and again, it's County Seat. This project is also interesting. It came in as a condominium development before the recession. It has since turned over to rental. This is Mill Creek Residential Trust who's building this out, and anyone drives down Old Country Road, you'll see the construction ongoing. It's a pretty interesting project, but in this case, and you can see that the built environment here, extremely constrained site in terms of available area for parking. So given the density in this location, on-site structured parking was made possible, financially because the density could support that infrastructure. So again, you see this these varying types of tools that are being used. And I'll just close with a project that the county partnered with the village of Valley Stream about a year ago. The county received a grant from HUD for sustainable communities, where we looked at individual downtown areas for the potential for new mixed-use development, residential development. So in this case, we chose Valley Stream as a pilot community, and with their guidance, we honed in on these two sites, Site A and Site B, which are Site B is a municipal parking lot owned by the village. It's currently reserved for commuter parking, for resident commuter parking. It's a very valuable lot because it is closest to the station platform itself. So, of course, that will go up first. And then there's the adjacent parking lot on the north side of Hawthorne, also a village parking lot. And then there are some private sites, privately owned sites just to the east. So here's just a photo of your, your standard commuter parking lot. Prettiest of images. Made sure to take a picture on a cloudy day with stark gray scale. So the consultants that we worked with the village of Freeport, Valley Stream, to come up with these conceptual plans and densities that would accommodate new residential development, but also accommodate the existing commuter stall capacity. So at the end of the day, you were looking at 372 stalls between the two lots that had to be preserved for commuters. So in addition to that, an additional almost 400 stalls for the program, which largely accounted for the residential component, and then there was a small amount of retail and restaurant that would be situated at the corner there. You have a county park here, the county hall, village park, village hall, a band shell. So the configuration sort of made sense to link with the village park. So again, the village has to take a harder look at this, and they're committed to doing so. We did have a few public meetings with the public, and David Sabatino was involved in that too. So we'll see where this goes. But again, we were sort of using the tools that we have and some of the context that we've seen from around the county to kind of develop a conceptual plan that could work in the village of Valley Stream. So we'll see where that goes, but we're very hopeful that this moves forward. And so thanks a lot, and I appreciate your time.
Do we have to, excuse me,
You want to go last? Okay.
do we have to wait till the end to ask anyone a question?
Usually we do, just because sometimes Q&A can grow, but
Well,
do you have a quick question?
I thought so, because I've been here a few times before, but I went to another session,
Okay.
and people were allowed to ask that
Well,
question.
do you have a quick question right now for Sean, or
I
for the
do.
previous? Okay, go ahead.
And I think it's very appropriate, because I've probably been involved in the parking issue for a very long time. And I like to hear one study after another, but I think studies and reality are two different things. And I think we never hear about the reality. And I happen to come from Rockville Center, and I'm listening to the reality of what's happening in the project, and that there's more spaces than they accounted for. And I'm saying to myself, there's a lot of shared parking, but who will go from this new development, from the tennis club, to go and share the spots that are at the other place? All these people that live there, when you count the cars in the evening, are taking their cars during the day, going into the village to really make no spaces available to regular businesses. And I think no thought is ever given to that. So it's very interesting to hear about all these studies, but in reality, where do these people that have all these parking spaces go during the day? They go to town. It becomes impossible in the business district. And I think studies are great, but I just don't think they're reality.
I think also there's
So
projected studies, and
I really think it's sort of an appropriate comment at this time, because I'm here because I wanted to hear what people have to say. And it's not that I expected to hear what I'm hearing, but it sort of makes me very aware of what happens to all these extra spaces that are supposed to be available during the day when business districts need those spaces for shopping.
Well,
So it's a very simple
I think
thing.
part of it is there's two kinds of studies. There's studies to predict what sort of parking is going to be needed, and then there's kind of like a post-occupancy study of what is actually happening after something is built. And I think, so part of it is done prediction is done generally by a developer coming in with a project proposing, this is what I think it's gonna be. But other times, municipalities will do a study to analyze what is really going on, which actually I think kind of segues into what you're gonna talk about, Bob, as far as Town of Huntington, which recently did a study to figure out how to deal with Huntington's parking situation.
I appreciate your explanation, but the point that I'm trying to make is studies are fine, but they're not really realistic in the real world.
They need to
And
be-
parking in particular is a real important issue in terms of small business, and that's all I have to say.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry if I interrupted.
It's okay. We can talk about a study that was recently done in Huntington. Sure. Yep.
It's a good segue, a very good segue. Interesting day. I start my day meeting this gentleman to the left for the first time, Victor Divers. I said, your name is very interesting, your last name. When I went to architectural school, his father was the dean of architecture, which was interesting that I met him today. And he found out that my father, who was also an architect, taught him at college. So it's a nice, humanities of separation. It's really a very nice thing. I'm a senior partner in H2M Architects and Engineers. I'm an architect myself, but I'm here representing the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the chair of the Huntington Chamber of Commerce. We have been active within the Huntington community in getting the town government to look at parking issues, specifically with the downtown of Huntington Village. Why Huntington Village? Huntington Village is a major economic force, similar to Village of Rockville Center. And our merchants, our fellow members of our Chamber of Commerce are concerned about parking. So what we did is one of our members of the Chamber of Commerce, I think Vita is here, I think, yes, she is, Vita Scaturo, who's a local banker, who's been very involved, is on the executive committee of the Chamber of Commerce, saw a presentation on one of the state programs on revitalization here on Long Island, and a group known as Nelson Nygaard, who are parking consultants, did a presentation. We found it was very interesting, because really what it was we hired them, and what happened is we got the town to pay money, the local business improvement district in Huntington Village paid money, and the Chamber of Commerce put money in a pot, and we hired Nelson Nygaard to develop a parking strategy for the downtown of the village, a strategy. And it was to look at not just spaces, how much we had, how much we needed, where they are. It was really looking at circulation, it was looking at signage, it was looking at the uses as far as at night, during the day, all kinds of things. And it really was interesting. First of all, we found out we had about 1,500 spaces in town. We have about 1,100 or 1,200 employees. So what does that tell you? I mean, it's an issue. The downtown is fully sewered, so the economic engine is there. It's zoned where it permits second floor